rain-slicked cobblestones of Whitmore Hall's courtyard gleamed like obsidian under a waning moon. A single scream, sharp, brittle, fractured the midnight stillness, echoing through the corridors lined with ancestral portraits. Moments later, Lady Eleanor Whitmore, society's darling and keeper of an old family secret, had vanished. Not a soul had seen her leave. In the great drawing room, a half-finished glass of champagne trembled on a silver tray, as if abandoned mid-toast. Hercule Poirot, mustache immaculate even in the damp chill, surveyed the silent, bewildered guests. Somewhere among them lurked the truth. A truth someone would kill to protect. Chapter 1. The Storm at Whitmore Hall. Approximately 2,050 words. Suggested audio timestamp 00 to 11:30. The wind rose from the moors like a living creature, wailing and twisting through the skeletal branches of the Whitmore oaks. Lightning flickered across the horizon, casting brief, ghostly light over the spires of Whitmore Hall, that sprawling Tudor estate whose chimneys clawed at the sky like blackened fingers. Rain struck the mullioned windows in furious sheets, each gust rattling the panes as though the storm itself demanded entry. Within, the grand ballroom glowed with 100 candles, their flames trembling but resolute. A jazz trio, imported from London for the occasion, played a lively but slightly off-kilter rendition of Ain't Misbehavin', their notes chasing one another across the marble floor like playful spirits. Guests in evening finery laughed too loudly, drank too deeply, and masked their discomfort at the oppressive weather by clustering near the hearth. The great fire spat and crackled, throwing amber light upon gilt-framed portraits. Stern Whitmore ancestors whose painted eyes seemed to watch the revelers with cool disdain. At the center of it all stood Lady Eleanor Whitmore, radiant in sapphire silk that caught every flicker of candlelight, secrets waiting for the proper spark. Thunder cracked overhead, silencing conversation for a heartbeat. Then, Sir Reginald's deep baritone cut through the air. "Eleanor, for heaven's sake, not now," he muttered, his jaw tight. Poirot's keen ears caught the words despite the music. Lady Whitmore smiled sweetly in response, but her sapphire eyes glittered with defiance. "Not now?" she replied softly. "My dear Reginald, there is no better time." Whatever disagreement simmered between them was drowned by the crescendo of the storm. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. A woman screamed. Glass shattered. For several seconds, the only sound was the moaning wind and the steady drumming of rain on glass. "Remain calm, mes amis." Poirot's voice rang out, steady and authoritative. "The electricity will return." His reassurance, spoken in his distinctive Belgian accent, soothed the crowd. Candles sputtered but held their flame, casting long shadows like phantom dancers across the walls. Moments later, the lights blinked back on. But Lady Whitmore, the evening's glittering star, was gone. At first, no one noticed. The jazz trio resumed hesitantly, their instruments sounding tinny and distant. It was Clara Pembroke, the lady's younger cousin, who shrieked, "Where's Eleanor?" Her voice cracked, brittle with panic. The crowd murmured. Guests craned their necks. Sir Reginald's face drained of color. She was right here," he stammered, scanning the room. "Eleanor?" No answer. Only the crackling fire and the hiss of the storm. Poirot moved quickly but without haste. He inspected the lady's last known position. On a small silver tray beside an empty chaise lounge stood her half. Someone was here. Someone who wished to suggest she left by the terrace. But the scene. He gestured delicately toward the footprint. It is too obvious, too convenient. A bolt of lightning split the sky, followed by a crash of thunder so loud it rattled the chandeliers. Gasps and whispers spread through the crowd. Julian Marks reappeared, his hair damp from rain, his usually composed features drawn tight. She's not upstairs. Not in the east wing either. Clara Pembroke, pale as ivory, wrung her hands. She wouldn't just run off. Not in this weather. Her voice trembled. She was frightened tonight, I could tell. Frightened of what? Poirot asked gently. Clara bit her lip. I don't know exactly. She was tense all evening, like she expected something dreadful. The music faltered to a stop. The storm roared outside. Poirot's mind ticked like a clock. He recalled whispers he had overheard earlier. Julian's hushed words to Dr. Bellamy about a missing heirloom. Reginald's curt dismissal of a letter from Paris. Clara's veiled barbs about inheritance. All puzzle pieces, scattered but promising. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot addressed the room. "It is imperative we remain calm and thorough. Lady Whitmore may be in danger. We shall search the house and grounds systematically." His tone brooked no argument. They fanned out. Poirot took the terrace first, lantern in hand. Rain lashed his face, soaking his immaculate overcoat, but he moved with precision. The gardens were a labyrinth of hedges and statues, their shapes monstrous in the stormlight. The marble fountain gurgled with rainwater. The bootprints led partway across the terrace, then vanished on the slick stones. No drag marks, no sign of struggle. The earring glinting beneath the rose bush, Lady Whitmore's distinctive sapphire earring, caught his eye briefly, but he left it untouched for now, unwilling to alert any watching eyes. He returned to the ballroom to find Reginald pacing like a caged lion, Clara seated with her head in her hands, and Julian whispering to Dr. Bellamy in a corner. Poirot's gaze flicked to the cell's word. A carefully staged disappearance. A room full of possible suspects, each with secrets. A storm to mask sounds and movements. Too many convenient details. The muddy footprint, the missing lady, the extinguished lights. He addressed the group again. "Mes amis, Lady Whitmore is either within this house or very near it. The storm makes flight impossible without assistance. Therefore, someone here knows more than they say." He let the words hang, heavy and accusing. Suddenly, a distant door creaked somewhere in the west wing. A long, low groan, like an old house exhaling. The guests froze. Poirot's head snapped toward the sound, his eyes alight with calculation. He tapped his mustache with a gloved finger and murmured, almost to himself, The game, it seems, has begun. Chapter 2. The Missing Lady. Suggested audio timestamp 11:30 to 23. The west wing of Whitmore Hall loomed like a brooding sentinel, its oak-paneled corridors groaning under the assault of the storm. Poirot's polished shoes clicked softly on the flagstones as he advanced, the lantern in his hand throwing jittering shadows across the walls. Behind him trailed Clara Pembroke, clutching a candelabrum with trembling fingers, and Inspector Harris, summoned hastily from the nearby village, his greatcoat dripping rain onto the Persian runners. "West wing's mostly unused," Harris muttered, his voice a low growl. "Drafty. Half the doors stick in winter. If Lady Whitmore's hiding anywhere, it'd be there." Poirot paused by a tall window streaked with rain, peering out into the darkness. Lightning revealed the gardens briefly. The fountain, the hedge maze, the old chapel ruin. Somewhere out there a fox barked, sharp, sudden, a sound that made Clara flinch. Poirot noted a reaction but said nothing. As they approached the door to the old music room, Harris pushed it open, the hinges groaning like a wounded animal. The room lay in disarray. They moved deeper into the wing, searching each chamber. Dust sheets draped unused furniture like pale shrouds. In one room, a moth-eaten armchair bore fresh indentations in the cushion, as though someone had sat there moments before. In another, Poirot found a faint trace of Eleanor's perfume, a distinctive blend of bergamot and sandalwood, lingering like a ghost. Clara clutched the candelabrum tighter. "I don't like this place." She was frightened tonight, I could feel it. Poirot stopped and turned to her. "Tell me, mademoiselle, you said earlier Lady Whitmore was anxious. Did she confide in you?" Clara hesitated. "Not exactly, but she hinted. She was being threatened. She didn't name names. She only said, 'The past never stays buried.' And she was glancing at Reginald when she said it." Harris grunted. "Sounds like domestic trouble to me. Rich folks and their secrets." Poirot's mustache bristled. "You are too quick to dismiss, Inspector. Lady Whitmore is clever. If she feared her husband, why host a fete? No, there is another layer." They returned to the ballroom where the guests gathered nervously. Julian Mark stood by the fire, drying his wet hair with a handkerchief. Dr. Agnes Bellamy poured herself a generous brandy, her hands shaking slightly. Sir Reginald paced, his boots leaving small damp patches on the rug. "She's not in the West Wing," Harris announced. "If she went outside, she'd be half frozen by now." "Outside?" Reginald barked. "Impossible. She despises the rain. Eleanor wouldn't step onto wet grass in satin shoes." Poirot studied him. "And yet, mon ami, a muddy footprint suggests someone wished us to believe she did." Julian interjected. Perhaps she's playing a prank. You know how Eleanor enjoys a bit of drama." But his tone wavered. Examine the terrace once more. "Julian, stay with the guests. Mademoiselle Clara, remain by the fire. And Dr. Bellamy," Poirot's eyes flicked to her, "please see that no one leaves. Outside, the storm's fury was ebbing, but the grounds were treacherous with mud. Poirot's lantern swept across the terrace. This time he crouched lower, examining the stones closely. The boot prints stopped abruptly, as though the wearer had leapt aside. No dragging marks, no sign of Lady Whitmore's small slippers. He spotted a faint smudge on the terrace railing, a residue of blackened wax. Candle wax. Strange to find outdoors. Someone had perhaps used a candle to illuminate their way in the blackout, then left evidence behind. Poirot pocketed a scraping with a small blade, his mind whirring. Returning inside, he found Harris frowning over a small drawer in the study desk. "Locked," the inspector muttered. "Reginald says he's lost the key." Poirot arched a brow. "Lost? Or hidden?" Sir Reginald appeared in the doorway. "Are you implying?" Poirot raised a hand. "Implying nothing, monsieur, merely noting." A sudden crash of glass from upstairs made everyone jump. Harris bolted for the staircase, Poirot close behind. In the gallery, a window pane had shattered inward, shards glittering on the carpet. Wind gusted through the broken glass. Outside, the gardens loomed dark and inscrutable. Poirot's sharp eyes spotted something half buried in the carpet. A broken cufflink, engraved with what appeared to be the Whitmore family crest. He held it up to the lightning's flash. "Curious," he murmured. "A token of struggle, or a planted clue." They returned downstairs, the tension thick enough to taste. Reginald poured himself a whiskey with a shaking hand. Julian stared at the fire as if hypnotized. Dr. Bellamy quietly locked the side doors, her face pale. Poirot addressed them all. "Mes amis, consider this. Lady Whitmore feared exposure, perhaps even blackmail. She vanishes in a still volume." Poirot retrieved it carefully. It was a telegram envelope, damp and smudged, addressed to Lady Whitmore. The postmark read, Paris, 2 days prior. The message inside was missing, but the envelope's flap bore traces of black wax, matching the smudge on the terrace railing. "A missing message," Poirot said thoughtfully. "A trail half hidden." Reginald's face darkened. "If Eleanor's playing games—" "Games?" Clara snapped. "She was terrified, Reginald. Perhaps she feared you." Reginald spun on her. "How dare you?" Poirot intervened, his tone mild but commanding. "Please, accusations will not bring Lady Whitmore back. We must consider every angle without anger." Julian cleared his throat. "Poirot, do you think she's alive?" Poirot's gaze was unreadable. "I think, monsieur, that until we have a body, we have only possibilities. And one possibility," he paused deliberately, "is that Lady Whitmore is closer than any of us suspect." A sudden scream, shrill, desperate, split the air, echoing through the west wing once more. Clara's candelabrum rattled in her grip. Harris swore and dashed toward the sound, followed by Reginald and Julian. Poirot, however, lingered a moment, his mind racing. The scream had been too precise, too perfectly timed, once again drawing them all to the west wing. He touched the broken cufflink in his pocket and smiled faintly. When he reached the corridor, the others were already searching rooms. Every door stood ajar, every window latched against the storm. Nothing. Only the sighing wind and the drip of rainwater. Poirot's gaze fell on a dusty tapestry depicting a medieval hunt. Its lower corner fluttered slightly, though there was no draft. He stepped closer, fingers grazing the edge. Behind it lay a narrow servant's passage, its darkness yawning like an open mouth. He whispered, Ah, Lady Whitmore, how clever you are. But when he peered into the passage, there was no sign of Eleanor, only the lingering trace of her perfume. The game was deepening, the web tightening. Perfect place for a desperate person to vanish. A low whistle cut through the dark. Poirot stiffened. It was not a random tune, but a precise four-note motif, Beethoven's Fifth, unmistakable even in its ghostly fragment. The choice was deliberate. Lady Whitmore herself had played that motif at the piano earlier that evening, laughing about its doom knocking at the door. The implication chilled him. Poirot retraced his steps, emerging back into the gallery. Harris's voice boomed from the far end. "Poirot, where the devil are you?" "I am here, Inspector," Poirot replied calmly. "Someone is moving through these passages, unseen. They know the hall better than we imagined." Clara appeared, white-faced, clutching her candelabrum. "I heard something. Was it her? Was it Eleanor?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone unreadable. "Or perhaps another ghost in this house of secrets." The others gathered in the ballroom once more, the air thick with fear. Sir Reginald poured himself another whiskey, his hands shaking visibly now. Julian Marks whispered with Dr. Bellamy near the fire, their conversation too low to catch. Poirot noted their anxious glances toward Reginald. "Mes amis," Poirot began softly. "Lady Whitmore may still be within these walls, but she does not wish to be found, not yet." The scream was too precise, the broken vase too theatrical. "We are being led." Harris scowled. "Led? By whom?" Poirot turned toward the towering portraits of Whitmore ancestors lining the walls. "By someone who knows how fear clouds reason." He walked to the library, beckoning Clara. "Mademoiselle, you mentioned a telegram burned earlier. Describe it precisely." Clara hesitated. "It was cream paper with a Paris postmark. I only glimpsed a few words before she tucked it away. Something about return what was taken does not produce forged cufflinks or staged screams." A crash from the dining room interrupted them. Harris rushed ahead, revolver drawn. The group followed to find a chair overturned, a window unlatched, and rain pooling on the floor. Poirot examined the sill. Mud smeared the wood, fresh mud. Yet there were no footprints leading away into the storm. "A ghost walks on air," Harris muttered. "Or," Poirot countered, "someone wishes us to think so." Clara's voice was a brittle whisper. "Why? Why go to such lengths?" "To obscure the truth, mademoiselle. In every deception, the liar buries the gem of fact beneath layers of performance. We must peel them away." Poirot sent Harris and Julian to search the cellars, while Reginald stalked the hall muttering curses. Left alone with Clara, Poirot observed her trembling hands. "You fear for your cousin?" he asked gently. Clara nodded. "She was all I had after my parents died. But lately, she changed. She was secretive and frightened of Reginald. And yet, she didn't trust Julian either. She said once, 'Blood and love both betray.' An intriguing phrase," Poirot mused. "Tell me, Clara, who stands to inherit if Lady Whitmore disappears?" She blinked. Reginald, of course. The estate passes to him. Ah, Poirot murmured. So the husband gains. And you? Clara flushed. I inherit a smaller portion, but enough to free me from debts. Poirot did not miss her embarrassment. Debt can be powerful motivators. I didn't, she began, but he raised a hand. I accuse no one, mademoiselle. I merely observe. Moments later, Julian returned, his face pale. The cellars are clear, but there's a bricked-up passage down there, old by the look of it. Harris says it once led to the chapel. Poirot's mustache twitched. Indeed. Whitmore Hall was built on secrets, and secrets often have doors. A distant clock chimed midnight, its echoes resonating through the empty halls. Poirot gathered everyone once more. Group ascended the narrow servant staircase, the air growing colder with each step. The attic smelled of cedar and dust, trunks stacked like sentinels against the eaves. Poirot's lantern light played across forgotten relics. A child's rocking horse, a moth-eaten fox stole, a stack of letters tied with ribbon. In the far corner, beneath a shrouded mirror, Poirot found a small scrap of fabric, torn and damp. He held it to the light. Sapphire blue silk, the same shade as Lady Whitmore's gown. But the edges were clean, as if deliberately cut, not torn in struggle. Planted, Poirot whispered. From below came a sudden, muffled sob, quickly stifled. Poirot froze. Clara's eyes widened. Harris swore under his breath. They descended swiftly, following the sound to the servants' corridor. A hidden door stood ajar, revealing the narrow passage Poirot had discovered earlier. Lantern light flickered within, casting strange, dancing shadows. Poirot led the way, moving silently. Halfway down the passage, they found fresh footprints in the dust, small, delicate, a woman's size. They led to another junction where the path forked again. One branch sloped downward toward the old chapel. The other curved back toward the library. Poirot examined the prints closely. She walks deliberately, he murmured. Not dragged, not fleeing blindly. Lady Whitmore has a plan. Suddenly, a muffled cry echoed from somewhere below, faint but unmistakable. Clara gasped. Harris tightened his grip on his revolver. Poirot's mind raced. If Eleanor was orchestrating her own disappearance, why cry for help? Was she no longer in control of her own game? They hurried toward the cellar entrance, only to find the bricked passage intact, the cry already faded. Lightning flared through a distant window, and for an instant Poirot thought he saw a shadow flit past, tall, high, the only outward sign of his own growing resolve. Somewhere within Whitmore Hall, Lady Whitmore waited, alive or dead, schemer or victim, and Poirot, master of order amid chaos, would find her. Chapter 4. Suspicions and Alibis. Approximately 2,050 words. Suggested audio timestamp, 3400 to 4530. The candles sputtered back to life one by one, relit by trembling hands, but the memory of that whispered warning, "You should not have come," clung to the guests like smoke. Poirot stood very still, the faintest crease in his immaculate suit the only sign of disturbance. His little gray cells whirred furiously. To unsettle Hercule Poirot with a single phrase. It was bold. Boldness, he knew, often betrayed desperation. Sir Reginald Whitmore broke the silence first, his voice roughened by whiskey and dread. "Enough of this madness. We'll wait out the storm and call the constabulary from the village at dawn. Lady Whitmore. She may have lost her senses." Inspector Harris's jaw tightened. "With respect, Sir Reginald, I am the constabulary, and I'm not waiting for dawn to secure answers." "Answers?" Julian Marks snapped, his usual polished veneer cracking. "What answers can you conjure when you found no trace of her? Perhaps she's already—" He stopped himself, glancing at Clara. Clara's eyes brimmed with tears, but she stood straighter. "Don't you dare suggest she's dead." Poirot raised a hand, his tone soothing but firm. "Mes amis, recriminations will not illuminate the truth. Let us proceed logically. Each of you will account for your movements tonight, from the moment the lights failed until Lady Whitmore's disappearance was noted." The group exchanged uneasy glances. Outside, the storm had dulled to a steady drizzle, the worst of its fury spent. But within Whitmore Hall, the tension mounted like a tightening noose. "Sir Reginald," Poirot began. "You first." Reginald's eyes flicked toward the fire, nothing to contradict her. "And you, Mademoiselle Pembroke?" Clara swallowed. I was speaking with Julian when the lights failed. I stayed by the fire until the scream." Poirot nodded slowly. "Bon. And Harris, you arrived after?" "I came as quick as I could from the village when Sir Reginald's man telephoned," the inspector replied. "But by then, she was already missing." Poirot clasped his hands behind his back, pacing a slow circle around them. "Each alibi rests on the word of another, or none at all. And the storm has wiped away outside evidence. Yet lies leave traces even when footsteps do not." He stopped before the mantel where the broken cufflink glimmered faintly. "This, for instance. A Whitmore crest, yes, but perhaps forged. The metal is poorly finished on the reverse. Lady Whitmore, ever observant, would notice a forgery. Perhaps she did, and paid for that knowledge." Clara gasped softly. "You mean someone tried to frame Reginald?" Reginald's face darkened. "Or Eleanor planted it herself to implicate me." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Possible. But ask yourself, monsieur. If she wished to ruin you, why vanish? She could expose you openly. No. This is a play within a play." Julian shifted uneasily. "She did love her little games," he muttered. Poirot's sharp eyes pinned him. "Games, yes, but this one has stakes of life and death." He moved to the writing desk, testing its locked drawer. "Still locked," he observed. "A pity." Clara stepped closer. Eleanor once kept personal letters in there, letters she never wanted Reginald to see. Could the telegram be among them? "Or evidence more dangerous," Poirot murmured. Outside, a branch scraped against the window pane, a sound like fingernails on glass. Dr. Bellamy started, sloshing brandy onto the rug. "Perhaps," Poirot said, "we should discuss motives more frankly." Tears welled in Clara's eyes. "I loved her," she whispered. Poirot's tone softened slightly. Love and resentment are not mutually exclusive. The hall clock chimed the quarter hour. Somewhere deep in the house, a floorboard creaked, a subtle reminder that the mystery's architect still moved among them. Poirot resumed his pacing, his voice thoughtful. We are faced with possibilities. Lady Whitmore staged her own vanishing to expose another's wrongdoing, or she was silenced before she could act. The cufflink, the scream, the telegram, they are breadcrumbs, but someone has scattered false crumbs among them. He paused, his eyes narrowing. We must search again. This time we do so systematically, in pairs. Reginald with Harris, Julian with Dr. Bellamy, Clara with me. And remember, watch not only for Lady Whitmore, but for any object that seems out of place. They dispersed reluctantly. Poirot and Clara searched the East Wing bedrooms, opening wardrobes heavy with mothball-scented gowns, tapping on paneling for hollow spaces. In one room, Poirot found a faint indentation in the carpet beside the bed, as though a small chest had been moved recently. In the library, Reginald and Harris discovered a crumpled handkerchief under a chair, embroidered with Eleanor's initials but suspiciously dry despite the damp night. Julian and Dr. Bellamy scoured the conservatory, where rainwater dripped through a cracked pane. Among the ferns, Julian found a silver hairpin glinting on the tiles. She never wore her hair this way, Bellamy murmured. It's a decoy. They reconvened in the drawing room. Poirot examined the new finds, his expression grave. Every clue we find feels arranged, as though someone choreographs our discoveries. Suddenly, Harris cursed. The side door, it's ajar. They rushed to the hallway. Muddy prints led only a few steps outside before ending abruptly, again. Poirot crouched, touching the wet stone. A pattern. Whoever plays this game understands Mr. Exposure enough to taunt us. But taunting Hercule Poirot is unwise. Clara whispered, Do you think Eleanor's still alive? Poirot's eyes glimmered in the firelight. I think, mademoiselle, that she is very much alive, and that her captor, or co-conspirator, underestimates my little gray cells. In the distance, thunder rumbled faintly once more, as though the storm itself were not yet finished. Chapter 5. The Chapel's Shadow. Approximately 2,050 words. Suggested audio timestamp, 45:30 to 57:30. The muffled sob drifted again from below. The kind of sound that slips beneath the skin, half human, half haunting. Poirot raised a gloved hand for silence, his lantern casting flickering halos against the stone walls. Harris clicked off the safety on his revolver. This way, Poirot whispered, leading the group through the servants' corridor toward the bricked-up cellar passage. Clara clutched his arm, her knuckles white against his sleeve. The passage smelled of damp earth and forgotten things. When they reached the cellar, the air grew colder, the storm's distant echoes replaced by the slow drip of water somewhere unseen. Poirot's lantern revealed the bricked archway, a rough wall hastily sealed generations ago. The sobbing had ceased. Reginald's voice was hoarse. No one's been through there in a century. Poirot examined the mortar, running a fingertip across its uneven surface. Perhaps. Yet, fresh dust lies on the floor. Someone disturbed this wall recently. Harris crouched, touching a faint imprint near the base. Boot heel. Small. Could be a woman's. Clara's breath caught. Eleanor. Julian Marks paced restlessly. So what now? Tear down the wall? It could take hours. Poirot straightened, eyes gleaming. Patience, monsieur. The guilty wish us to rush. We shall be precise. He tapped the mortar with the butt of his cane. A hollow sound answered. Ah, behind these bricks is not solid earth but a cavity. The inspector grunted. I'll fetch a crowbar. Minutes later, the first brick clattered free, revealing darkness beyond. Harris widened the gap until the lantern could slip through. Its light revealed a narrow stone corridor leading downward, old, forgotten, lined with crumbling saints whose carved eyes seemed to follow them. They entered cautiously. The air grew heavy, smelling of mildew and something faintly metallic, like old blood. Alone. Someone was with her. A man. Did you see his face? Harris demanded. No. But he whistled. 4 notes, like the piano piece. Poirot exchanged a sharp glance with Clara. Beethoven's Fifth. Lucy wrung her hands. They argued. She said, "You'll regret this, Reginald." But... She broke off, trembling. Then there was a crash. I ran. All eyes swung to Sir Reginald, whose face darkened. This is absurd. She's lying. Poirot's voice was mild, almost sympathetic. Perhaps. Or perhaps the truth is uncomfortable, monsieur. The detective surveyed the chapel. Near the altar, he spotted a golden locket half buried in dust. He retrieved it delicately. Inside, a miniature portrait of Lady Whitmore stared back, her painted eyes oddly mournful. Opposite the portrait, tucked into the frame, was a scrap of folded paper. Poirot unfolded it carefully. Return what you stole, or face ruin. Clara gasped. The telegram's message. Harris frowned. So she was being blackmailed. Or she was the blackmailer, Julian suggested slyly. Poirot pocketed the locket. The balance of power shifts like the wind tonight. Come, let us leave this place. It smells of old guilt. As they climbed back to the cellar, Lucy lagged behind. Poirot glanced back to see her glance nervously over her shoulder, as though someone still watched from the ruined chapel's shadows. Back in the warmth of the drawing room, Lucy was given a blanket and tea. Poirot seated himself by the fire, turning the locket over in his fingers. Let us consider, he said softly. Lady Whitmore accuses Reginald of theft or another crime. Reginald denies. The telegram warned her, and yet she vanishes. Julian poured himself brandy, his hand shaking only slightly. She could be manipulating us all. She enjoyed control. Clara's voice trembled. She was frightened, Julian. Don't pretend otherwise. Poirot regarded them each in turn. Fear and manipulation are not exclusive. Wife have accused you of stealing. Nothing, he snapped. She was hysterical. Not jewels, not letters, not money. Reginald glared. This interrogation borders on insult. Poirot's mustache twitched. Insults are crude tools, monsieur. I prefer precision. The detective rose, his eyes sweeping the room. It grows late, yet our quarry grows bolder with every hour. We shall search again at dawn. For now, I suggest you all remain together, safety in company. The guests murmured uneasy assent, but Poirot remained restless. When the others had settled, he slipped into the corridor with Clara. You suspect Reginald, she whispered. I suspect everyone, Poirot replied. but Reginald is too obvious. The best murderers are those we least suspect, or those who make themselves too obvious, hoping we dismiss them. He led her toward the west wing, where the portraits loomed like silent judges. At the end of the corridor, a draught stirred, a hidden door slightly ajar. Poirot pushed it open to reveal a small study, its desk strewn with papers. Among them lay a ledger filled with neat handwriting, dates, amounts, and initials. Clara scanned a page. "These are gambling debts," she whispered. "Reginald's debts. Eleanor must have found them." A floorboard creaked behind them. Poirot turned sharply, but the hallway was empty. Only the wind whispered through the cracks. They returned to the drawing room where Harris dozed lightly in an armchair. Julian was at the drinks cabinet, his back turned. Dr. Bellamy pretended to read, but her eyes flicked constantly to the doorway. Reginald stared into the fire, his jaw clenched. Poirot placed the ledger discreetly in his pocket. He smiled faintly. "Sleep lightly tonight, mes amis. The truth is a restless creature. It does not like to remain hidden." As midnight deepened, the house seemed to hold its breath. Rain tapped softly at the windows, the storm's fury spent, but its ghosts lingering. Poirot remained awake, seated near the fire, his mind assembling the fragments. A forged cufflink, a burned telegram, a stolen locket, a ledger of debts, a whispered threat. Then Whitmore's glove. His eyes gleamed, alert and utterly unafraid. "Upstairs," he said simply. Inspector Harris leapt to his feet, revolver in hand. Reginald was slower, as though a weight pressed upon him. Clara clung to the back of a chair, her face pale. Julian Marks exchanged a quick, uneasy glance with Dr. Bellamy before following. The grand staircase groaned under their weight. Above, the gallery stretched long and dim, portraits of Whitmore ancestors looming in solemn judgment. The storm had subsided to a steady drizzle, but thunder still grumbled faintly on the horizon. A door creaked at the far end of the corridor. Poirot raised a lantern, its light carving away the darkness. The air smelled faintly of lavender and damp stone. The source of the crash revealed itself. A fallen suit of armor lay in a twisted heap across the gallery floor, its halberd snapped clean in two. "Another performance," Poirot murmured. "Our phantom has a flair for the dramatic." Julian snorted. "Perhaps a rat knocked it over." "Non, monsieur," Poirot said mildly. "The angle of the fall, the precision. This was staged to draw us here." A faint sound, like a woman's sob, echoed again, this time from behind the tapestry at the end of the gallery. Harris yanked the fabric aside, revealing a narrow doorway leading into the West Tower stairwell. "Careful," Poirot warned. The spiral staircase wound upward into shadows. Halfway up, Clara gasped and pointed. A trail of white rose petals dotted the steps, glimmering in the lantern light. Poirot bent to pick one up, rolling it between his fingers. "She was wearing roses tonight," Clara whispered. "Oui," Poirot replied. "But look closer." He turned the petal. A faint smudge of charcoal marred its edge. Artificial. Torn from a bouquet in the ballroom, perhaps. Another breadcrumb. At the tower's top, they found a small circular chamber, the old watchroom. The windows looked out over the dripping gardens. "Shall follow. Alone." Clara's protest was immediate. "No, Poirot. You can't." "I can," he said gently. "The fox will not reveal itself in a crowd." Lantern in hand, Poirot descended swiftly. The gardens glistened under the weak moonlight. The maze loomed like a living creature, its hedges whispering in the breeze. Poirot paused at the entrance, letting his little gray cells weigh every clue. The figure had whistled deliberately, luring him here, or leading him astray. Inside, the maze's walls closed around him. The lantern's glow danced across wet leaves, and every turn seemed to echo with footsteps not his own. Twice he doubled back, only to find a single white rose petal pinned to the hedge. At the maze's center, he found a stone bench slick with rain. Upon it lay a silk scarf, soaked and twisted as though in struggle. Beside it, a scrap of paper, half of a letter, the handwriting unmistakable as Lady Whitmore's. "If you expose me, I will destroy you first." Poirot's mustache twitched. Eleanor Whitmore had not been entirely innocent, it seemed. A rustle behind him. Poirot spun, but too late. A figure in a dark cloak lunged from the shadows, knocking the lantern from his hand. The light snuffed out, plunging him into blackness. Poirot staggered, narrowly avoiding a shove that might have sent him against the stone bench. "Who are you?" he called calmly, even as adrenaline surged. "You will not frighten Hercule Poirot." A whisper, barely audible, brushed his ear. "You are already too late." Then silence. Poirot retrieved the fallen lantern, its flame miraculously unbroken, but the figure had vanished. The maze was still once more. He returned to the hall, soaked and thoughtful. The others waited in the drawing room, their faces pale and tense. "No sign of them?" Harris asked. "No," Poirot said quietly. "But we now know this. Lady Whitmore was neither blameless nor powerless. Someone feared exposure, and planted for me to find," he said. "Why? To incriminate, to mislead, or to ask for help?" The hall clock told 2. Outside, the drizzle had ceased. Whitmore Hall's ancient stones seemed to groan under the weight of secrets. Poirot's little gray cells thrummed with possibilities. A vanished lady, a ledger of debts, a forged cufflink, whispered warnings, and a shadow that walked freely among them. He turned to Clara, his voice gentle. "Mademoiselle, tell me, did your cousin speak of the chapel, of the maze?" Clara nodded hesitantly. "She said she feared the chapel, that something terrible had happened there long ago. But she wouldn't say what." "Ah," Poirot murmured. "Old sins casting long shadows." Harris cleared his throat. "We should wait for daylight. The grounds are too dangerous now." Poirot agreed. "But tomorrow, Inspector, we search not only for Lady Whitmore, but for the history of Whitmore Hall. Somewhere in its past lies the key." As the others settled uneasily for the night, Poirot remained awake, staring into the dying fire. The whisper still echoed in his mind. "You are already too late." Yet he knew the game was far from finished. Lady Whitmore was clever, but so was her hunter, and Hercule Poirot was cleverer still. Chapter 7. Echoes Beneath the Stones. Approximately 2,050 words. Suggested audio timestamp 109 to 121. The 3 deliberate knocks reverberated through the bricked passage like a heartbeat under stone. Poirot's eyes snapped open, his fatigue vanishing. The embers in the fireplace glowed like watchful eyes. Slowly, he rose, careful not to wake the others. But Clara stirred anyway, her senses taut. "Poirot, did you hear that?" she whispered. "Oui, mademoiselle," he murmured. "Stay here. I will investigate." But Clara followed him anyway as he took a lantern and padded toward the cellar door. The house was eerily still, save for the distant patter of lounged in a chair, though his relaxed posture was too forced. Dr. Bellamy sat stiffly, her eyes shadowed. "You heard it too?" Harris demanded. "Indeed," Poirot replied. "But whoever made the sound wishes to hurry us. We must not oblige." Julian sneered. "Perhaps your lady in distress is simply playing games." "Non, monsieur," Poirot said. "This was no game. The rhythm was precise. 3 knocks. A plea or a warning." Clara's voice was thin. "Perhaps she's trapped. Or perhaps," Poirot countered, "someone wishes us to divide our forces and leave a gap for escape." He turned to Reginald. "So Whitmore, you know this hall's history best. Tell us, what lies beyond that wall?" Reginald hesitated, then swallowed. "Old crypt passages. My great-grandfather had them sealed after some unpleasantness. There were rumors, smugglers, family scandals. Eleanor hated that part of the house. She called it cursed. Cursed places," Poirot murmured, "are often convenient hiding places." Poirot retrieved the ledger he'd pocketed earlier and laid it on the table beside the golden locket. The guests leaned closer. "These debts," Poirot said, "are ruinous. If revealed, Sir Reginald's reputation collapses. But perhaps Eleanor discovered them and sought to use them." Reginald glared. "Eleanor loved this family name. She'd never—" "Love and betrayal are intimate neighbors," Poirot said softly. "And the locket, tucked with a threat, speaks of deep secrets." Clara's gaze darted to Julian. Could Eleanor have been protecting someone else? Julian's jaw tightened. Perhaps, but from what? Poirot tapped the ledger thoughtfully. "Let us ask instead, who else might fear exposure? Dr. Bellamy, your past in Vienna, perhaps?" The physician stiffened. "That has nothing to do with this." "Perhaps it does," Poirot replied. "A scandal abroad, a connection to Paris, and a telegram of disturbed dust along the edge." He tapped lightly. Hollow. Sliding the frame aside, he found a small hidden niche in the wall. Inside was a velvet pouch containing an antique key and another folded note. The note read, "Blood binds us all. Trust no one beneath this roof." Clara trembled. "She left this for you." "Perhaps," Poirot said. "Or perhaps someone wishes me to suspect everyone equally." They descended to the drawing room to regroup. Reginald and Julian returned empty-handed, their tension palpable. Harris and Bellamy had discovered only a drafty window left ajar. Poirot showed them the pouch. Julian snatched it, turning the key over. "This doesn't fit any lock I know of here." Reginald frowned. "It looks older than the hall itself." "Then it must open something very old," Poirot said quietly. "Something the Whitmore family wished forgotten." A sudden scream cut through the hall. A woman's scream, high and chilling. The group raced back up the gallery. There in the moonlit corridor they glimpsed a figure in sapphire silk gliding past the far archway. "Eleanor!" Clara cried, breaking free. "Clara, wait!" Poirot called, but she had already bolted. They chased her through the gallery, but the figure vanished into the darkness beyond the west wing. At the corridor's end, they found only a discarded candlestick, still warm to the touch. Poirot knelt, inspecting the floor. No footprints. No sign of a door opening or closing. Harris muttered, "This is impossible." "No," Poirot said. "Merely clever." He noticed Clara's shaking hands. "Mademoiselle, you must be cautious. The phantom wishes to lure the most emotional among us." Clara swallowed. She looked alive. "She may be," Poirot replied. "But remember, appearances can be orchestrated." Back in the study, Poirot spread old Whitmore family documents across the desk. Records he... "Julian, don't pretend otherwise." Bellamy snapped. "Both of you, stop." Poirot observed quietly, cataloging reactions. Clara's eyes darted between them, wide and frightened. Harris watched Reginald with growing suspicion. Poirot finally spoke. "Mes amis, if Lady Whitmore still lives, she listens now. And if she is dead, her killer listens too. Let us not give them satisfaction." He rose, pocketing the key and the note. "We will search again at first light. For now, guard your words." Later, while the others tried to rest, Poirot sat alone by the dying fire. The house creaked and sighed around him. He studied the golden locket, the ledger, the velvet pouch, the half-letter and the scarf, assembling the fragments in his mind. Why had the phantom whispered, "You are too late"? Too late for what? The ledger suggested ruin. The telegram, blackmail. The staged appearances, distraction. Perhaps Eleanor was alive, orchestrating her own drama. Or perhaps she had discovered a secret even older than Reginald's debts. Poirot's gaze drifted to the portraits, their painted eyes glimmering in the firelight. "The sins of the past," he murmured, "cast the longest shadows." A faint click sounded from the corridor, a door gently closing. Poirot rose silently and followed, his steps soft on the carpet. At the far end of the hall, the tapestry beside the tower stairs swayed slightly, though no draught stirred. Poirot touched it, revealing another narrow passage. Inside, faint footprints marred the dust, small, delicate, a woman's size. They led toward the bricked cellar once again. Poirot followed until the passage curved, where he found a scrap of blue silk snagged on a nail. He pocketed it, his expression unreadable. Poirot returned to the drawing room to find the fire almost out. Clara slept fitfully on the settee. Harris dozed in a chair, his revolver loose in his grasp. Reginald and Julian were nowhere to be seen. Then, returned to the drawing room, finding Harris roused and Clara awake, her face pale. Reginald and Julian entered moments later, their clothes damp with sweat and rain, claiming they had checked the stable yard for intruders. "Mes amis," Poirot said softly, "the time has come. We will search the chapel immediately." Harris frowned. "In the dead of night?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "It is at night that the guilty feel safest." The ancient chapel stood apart from Whitmore Hall, its spire a jagged silhouette against the waning moon. Inside, Their lantern light revealed faded frescoes of saints and sinners, and an altar draped in dusty velvet. The air was cold, almost damp, and carried the faint scent of lilies long decayed. Clara shivered. Eleanor hated this place. Reginald scowled. Because she believed childish legends. Or, Poirot said mildly, because legends often hide truths. Behind the altar, a loose flagstone caught Poirot's eye. He knelt, pried it up, and revealed a small box wrapped in oilskin. Inside were old letters, a tarnished signet ring, and a second telegram, this one unsent. It read, "If you expose me, the Whitmore name burns. Meet me in the chapel tonight." Julian paled. That handwriting, it's Eleanor's. Indeed, Poirot said. But she wrote no name. Dr. Bellamy examined the letters. These are love letters, decades old, addressed to a C. Cecilia Whitmore's handwriting by the look of it. Poirot nodded. The vanished heiress. And these letters, evidence of scandal? Perhaps of forbidden love? Clara's breath caught. She told me once. Cecilia was said to have run off with a servant. It ruined the family. Harris frowned. So Eleanor discovered this and threatened someone? Or she saw history repeating, Poirot murmured. Back in the hall, tempers frayed. Reginald slammed a decanter on the table. Enough of these ghost stories. Someone in the records. One portrait, a 17th century lord, held a cabinet beneath its frame. The key turned easily in its lock. Inside, a ledger of Whitmore secrets. Scandals, bribes, and records of illegitimate heirs. Among the brittle pages, Poirot found one name circled in red ink. Julian Marks, bloodline connection. Poirot's eyebrows rose. Julian, the charming secretary, was no mere employee. He was a Whitmore by blood. He replaced the ledger, his mind spinning. Was Julian avenging an ancestor's disgrace, or claiming his rightful inheritance by removing Eleanor? A crack of thunder shook the hall. Rain lashed the windows again. Poirot returned to the drawing room, where he found Julian alone, staring into the fire. Late night for reflection? Poirot asked casually. Julian didn't turn. You already suspect me. Why pretend otherwise? Poirot's voice was mild. I suspect everyone, but I find blood ties most compelling. A shame Eleanor never told the others about yours. Julian spun. How did you? Poirot lifted a brow. The ledger sings when one knows the tune. Julian's jaw tightened. Yes, I'm a Whitmore by blood. My grandmother was Cecilia's sister. But Eleanor knew. She swore she'd help me. Then she betrayed me. Poirot regarded him steadily. Did you betray her first? Julian's lips curled in a bitter smile. Believe what you wish, Poirot. But she wasn't the saint you imagine. Poirot suggested they all search the maze once more, this time under controlled conditions. Lanterns in hand, they fanned out cautiously. Harris stayed at the entrance to block escape. Poirot led Clara and Bellamy down the left path, while Reginald and Julian took the right. The rain had softened the earth, revealing fresh footprints. Small, slippered, a woman's size. The trail led them to the stone bench again. This rediscovered it. Perhaps she sought justice. Or revenge. Clara's voice wavered. But why would that mean her death? Poirot closed the diary. Secrets, mademoiselle, are the most dangerous currency. Back in the hall, Poirot gathered them. Tomorrow, the world will come knocking. The police from London, the papers, unless I deliver a resolution tonight. Therefore, mes amis, I propose a test. He produced the half-letter, the scarf, the bracelet, and the telegram. The guilty party has handled at least 3 of these items. Their fingerprints will betray them. Harris raised a brow. You think they'll volunteer their hands? Poirot smiled thinly. They need not. I already know. The others stared. Poirot continued. The guilty one staged a ghost, played piano keys, fired a gun without leaving a bullet. They knew the hall's secrets intimately. They are desperate enough to risk everything, yet clever enough to leave us doubting. And they forget, always, one small detail. A rumble of thunder underscored his words. Tomorrow, Poirot said, I shall reveal them. As the others dispersed uneasily, Poirot lingered by the window, watching lightning fork across the sky. Somewhere in the maze a lantern flickered, though none of them were outside. He turned just as a shadow slipped through the doorway of the bricked passage. The distant echo of Eleanor's voice floated up the stairs. Too late. Too late. Poirot tightened his grip on the diary. Tomorrow would bring the truth. But tonight, the hall itself seemed to hold its breath. Chapter 9. The Trap is Set. Suggested audio timestamp 1:33:00 to 1:45:00. The muffled scream from the cellar tore through Whitmore Hall's midnight silence. Poirot was already moving before Harris could draw his revolver. Lanterns flared to life as the others scrambled from their rooms, faces pale with dread. Stay together, Poirot commanded. Tonight is for clarity, not chaos. They descended into the cellar, the stone steps slick beneath their feet. The bricked passage gaped before them like an unhealed wound. Murderer. Reginald snapped. And you'd know about betrayal, wouldn't you? Julian's face hardened. You had motive, Reginald. Financial ruin. You were drowning in debt. Better ruin than bloodline disgrace, Reginald shot back. Your claim to the Whitmore name must sting, Julian. Perhaps you decided to remove the obstacle. Dr. Bellamy intervened sharply. Enough, all of you. Her calmness was cracking now. Blaming each other won't bring Eleanor back. Poirot watched in silence, letting the tension rise. Conflict often loosened tongues and revealed guilt. While the others argued, Poirot quietly arranged the pieces of evidence on a side table. The half-letter threatening exposure, the velvet pouch, the telegrams, the golden locket, the bracelet with dried blood. He examined each item under a magnifying lens. The telegram had a faint fingerprint on its edge, small, delicate, and smudged with charcoal. Poirot noted the detail without comment. The broken clasp on the bracelet revealed jagged edges as if torn during a struggle. In the firelight, Poirot murmured to himself, The guilty one believes themselves clever, but always they leave a small imperfection. He pocketed the locket and the diary once again. By dawn, the storm had passed. A pale gray light seeped through Whitmore Hall's mullioned windows. Poirot gathered the group in the library, his voice measured. Mes amis, today we end this charade, but first, We must search every inch of this house. Lady Whitmore is either alive, or her body is here." Harris nodded. "We'll start with the attic." Poirot shook his head. "No. We begin where it began. The chapel." The others exchanged uneasy glances but obeyed. The chapel was damp with morning dew. Birds called faintly outside, the world beginning anew while Whitmore Hall remained steeped in darkness. Poirot examined the altar again, running his fingers along the wood. He tapped lightly, hollow. Reginald swore softly. "Someone's been here tonight." Poirot studied the walls. A recent scratch bore a single word etched crudely. "Help." Clara covered her mouth. She was here. Poirot crouched to examine the footprints. 2 sets, he noted. 1 small, 1 larger. She was not alone. Returning to the house, Poirot gathered them once again. His tone was sharper now. "Enough deception. The truth comes soon, but first, I require honesty. Julian, you are a Whitmore by blood. Reginald, your debts are catastrophic. Dr. Bellamy, your past in Vienna haunts you. Clara, you knew Eleanor's confidences. All of you have lied by omission." Julian stepped forward. "Yes, I'm a Whitmore, but I didn't harm her. She promised to recognize me. Then she threatened to expose Reginald and humiliate us all if I pressed my claim." Reginald slammed his fist on the mantel. "Lies!" Bellamy's voice trembled. "Eleanor asked me about sedatives 2 days ago. She was frightened, but she wouldn't say of whom." Clara whispered. "She said she feared the past was catching her." Poirot's gaze swept over them. "The past does not catch us, mes amis. We catch ourselves by repeating it." A sudden crash upstairs sent Harris bolting from the room. They followed to find the gallery window shattered. A stone lay on the carpet. Wrapped around it was a torn scrap of Eleanor's gown. Outside, the garden path was empty. Harris cursed. "She's toying with us again." Poirot stooped, examining the stone. No. This was staged to suggest she escaped. But she is still here. After Poirot found Clara alone in the music room, staring at the silent piano. "She was my cousin, Poirot," Clara whispered. "She was vain, imperious. But she was family. She didn't deserve this." Poirot studied her expression. "You loved her, yes?" Clara hesitated. "I envied her." She looked away. She had everything: beauty, wealth, power. She could crush people with a word. Placed the golden locket on the table. "This," he said softly, "was planted to mislead, but its engraving holds the truth. To C.W., my heart, my heir. Cecilia Whitmore's lover gave her this, and its secret links the past to tonight." Julian's fork clattered onto his plate. Poirot continued. "The same cunning mind that staged a phantom, played a piano without touch, and fired a phantom bullet, now believes themselves safe. But I have already set the stage for their undoing." After dinner, Poirot instructed Harris to lock every exterior door and window. "No one leaves," he said. "The killer must face their reckoning here." He positioned the evidence, diary, bracelet, telegram, on the drawing room table. "At dawn," he announced, "I shall summon the local constabulary and reveal all." Julian scoffed. "Why wait?" Poirot smiled faintly. "Because the guilty will not sleep tonight. They will act. and I will be ready." He withdrew quietly to the library, but not before whispering to Harris, "Watch the maze entrance. Watch, but do not interfere, unless blood is shed." The hall was silent except for the ticking clock. Poirot sat in the shadows, pretending to nap in an armchair. Hours passed. Then, a faint creak of a door. Bare footsteps padded across the marble floor. A lantern's glow slipped toward the cellar door. Poirot followed silently, each step calculated. In the bricked passage, the intruder pried at the mortar, desperate. A glint of blue silk betrayed them. Poirot stepped forward, lantern raised. "It is over, mon ami, or should I say, ma chère." The intruder froze, half-turned, the lantern's light catching their face. Their eyes widened in shock and fury. "Poirot," they began. But Poirot's voice cut like a blade. "You played your part well, but your final move was too bold. The maze, the piano, the chloroform, the mirror. You orchestrated every note of this symphony of fear. And now, the overture." The draft. The piano stool was empty. Then, a voice behind him. "You should have stopped digging, Poirot." Dr. Bellamy stood in the doorway, a revolver steady in her hand. Her usually calm eyes now burned with desperation. "Ah," Poirot said quietly. "So it is you." Her lips trembled. "You were never meant to understand. Eleanor was cruel. She delighted in holding our secrets hostage. She destroyed lives for sport." Poirot inclined his head. "And she discovered yours?" Bellamy nodded once. "In Vienna, I made a mistake. A patient died, scandalous, ruinous. Eleanor learned of it. She threatened to expose me unless I continued to supply her with sedatives, and helped her frame Reginald for the fortune's mismanagement. But then she grew greedy. She wanted to humiliate Julian, too. She said she would publish every secret." Poirot's gaze softened. "And so you planned her disappearance?" "She laughed at me," Bellamy hissed. "Said she would announce my disgrace at the gala. So I chloroformed her, hid her in the chapel passage, and staged the rest. The piano, the armor, the rose petals, all to keep suspicion elsewhere. But when you came, Poirot, you read the signs too well." A faint sound, a cough, came from the bricked passage behind the chapel wall. Bellamy stiffened. Poirot stepped aside. "Lady Whitmore," he called. "It is time." Harris, Reginald, Clara, and Julian burst in through the adjoining door, lanterns blazing. Had Poirot signaled, Harris pushed aside the secret door. From the shadows emerged Lady Eleanor Whitmore herself, disheveled but very much alive, her eyes blazing with indignation. "You!" Eleanor spat at Bellamy. "You thought you could break me?" Clara sobbed with relief. "Eleanor, thank God." Bellamy's hand shook on the revolver. "Stay back. She would have ruined us all." "No, madame," Poirot said gently. "She would have ruined you. Reginald's debts, Julian's lineage, these were—" Bellamy sagged, defeated. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "She would have destroyed me," she whispered. Poirot's voice was quiet but firm. "Perhaps. But you chose the path of violence. That, madame, is your undoing." Eleanor straightened her torn gown chin high despite the ordeal. "I will not forgive you," she said coldly to Bellamy. but I will not forget Poirot's brilliance. You saved my life. Poirot inclined his head modestly. The truth, madame, has a way of surfacing, even through stone walls. Clara approached Eleanor hesitantly. You terrified us all. Eleanor sighed. Perhaps I deserved some terror in return. I have been unkind. Her voice softened slightly. But Whitmore blood is stubborn. Reginald exhaled, the weight of suspicion lifting. Poirot, Thank you. Julian, pale but composed, muttered, We are all exposed now. No more secrets. On the contrary, Poirot said with a faint smile, secrets never vanish entirely. They merely find new places to hide. By dawn, police carriages arrived to take Dr. Bellamy into custody. Whitmore Hall, bathed in pale sunlight, seemed almost peaceful again, though the shadows lingered in its corners. Poirot and Harris walked the grounds, the dew sparkling on the hedges of the maze. She's clever, Harris said. Could have gotten away with it, if not for you. Poirot's mustache twitched. Non, mon ami. She might have escaped for a time, but guilt is a patient hunter. He paused to admire a lone white rose blooming stubbornly by the maze entrance. Consider, Inspector, how even beauty may conceal thorns. Later, as Poirot prepared to depart, Lady Whitmore herself approached him on the gravel drive. She was composed now, though her face bore the pale aftermath of fear. You have my gratitude, Monsieur Poirot, she said, and perhaps my respect, though it galls me to admit. Poirot inclined his head.